Calories a calorie, just count your calories and exercise and you're going to be all set. That's not true. What you eat and how you live can actually help to restore your own healthy metabolism. They all have these sulforaphanes, and sulforaphanes activate your bad fat and actually starts to slow them down, shrink them down, and direct them into a different direction to become more healthy fat. Certain can intercept stem cells. So the body has these fat stem cells to make more fat. Take these baby pre-fat cells and make them stay there. You can actually not just claw your way back to where you started, but you can actually even get better. To me, How do you do that? You do that by there are these great wooden engravings going back to medieval times with this like calories in and excrement out. And it's not false. It's a good basic principle, but you know, where we are now is we are light years ahead in our refined understanding of not just calories, but how the body processes what you put into it. It's kind of like fuel. You got a nice car. If you're actually putting good quality engine oil and a good quality calories in the case of your body, your car is going to drive a little bit longer. It's going to perform better. Okay. It's going to be happier and you're going to be happier with it for a longer period of time. And you have to be informed about what you're putting inside your chassis, your fuel tank. And I think that's really the biggest misconception, that it's simply a number, like a calculator.
Yeah.
Calories in, calories out. If you exercise, if you eat less, you're going to be all set. And as a matter of fact, the quality of the calories makes a huge amount of difference. You could have the same number of calories in a can of soda, okay, as you could actually have in a plate of fruit. And they would obviously be radically different because of the effect of the micronutrients on those aspects of your body. Metabolism is really the process that our cells use to extract energy from food, if we're feeding ourselves, and from within our body to be able to power up and fuel all of the functions, from the molecular to the cellular to the organ to the organismic level. That's basically what metabolism actually is. And we don't think about it that way, but I think science is telling us that there's all these layers to peel back to understand how the engine runs. So, you know, if anybody who's actually sat in a plane, right? You get your boarding pass, you get onto the plane, you buckle your seatbelt, you settle back for the flight. You know, it's kind of like getting into a plane is kind of like trying to understand metabolism. It seems kind of easy. You can settle down into the seat, you know, and just enjoy the ride. But in fact, there's a lot going on, from the cockpit to the engines, to the fuel tanks, to the weight of the passengers and the weight of the luggage, to the delays, to the air traffic control. And so that analogy really tells us that somebody needs to be in charge of understanding this. And I think that's where folks like you and I, Mark, are really trying to play our role in digging into what the science is actually showing and connecting the dots with what everybody already understands. And whenever there's a misconception, we got to try to clear that up, just to bring it home to people who are listening that, you know, are not really into the learning all about all the different aspects of the science. And here's what boils down to. Most people realize that their body's metabolism is connected to their weight, right? That's one of even a kid in grade school learns that pretty early on. And here's one of the things that I think, you know, for metabolism, it's so complicated what we're learning. Maybe it's simpler to help people understand what we're learning is not correct. Like, what are the myths of metabolism? One of the myths we just talked about is the fact that calorie is a calorie, just count your calories and exercise and you're going to be all set. That's not true, obviously. The second thing, and the quality obviously matters. The second thing that's really interesting is that, you know, how many people have you heard say, my sister or my sibling was really lucky because he or she was born with a fast metabolism, and look how skinny he or she is, right? And then, of course, then the other line is that, well, look, I wasn't so lucky. I was born with a bad metabolism, and that's why I have so much struggle with my weight. I can't tell you the number of patients I've actually heard from that. And actually, honestly, when I was in medical school, I drank that Kool-Aid too, you know, because,
for sure.
Right. That's the stuff that we learned. It's almost, And yet you don't really find that in a textbook. That's just the populist belief. Here's what the science is actually showing.
Yeah.
In fact, our fat, our body fat, is our most important gland, endocrine organ in our body.
Yeah.
And most people don't realize this, but before you could stuff your face to get fat, your fat formed before you even had a face. So here's a sperm and egg meat, your ball of cells. Some of the first organs that form are your circulation and your nerves. They form this kind of like these lakes and these little tributaries. The third cell after blood vessel nerve that forms in your body is adipose cell. Your fat forms before any other organ. So you got to ask yourself a question, which is what I'm doing now. Like, I'm diving deep into this stuff, really like a scientist trying to understand what's going on. This adipose tissue communicates with your circulation, communicates with your nerves, and is actually an endocrine hormonal organ. It produces at least 15 hormones that connect to your brain, to your stomach, to your immune system, all these other things. Adiponectin is one of them, that certain foods can make make more your fat. You want to feed your fat good stuff so it makes better hormones for you.
Yeah.
But fat, like any other tissue, has to be tamed. And so I think that's another kind of myth to be busted, is that fat, it must die. Wrong.
Yeah.
Fat keeps us alive. It's when it gets untamed.
Like you want smart fat, not angry fat.
That's right. It even gets deeper than that when you look at those micronutrients, those bioactives that are present mostly in the foods that we already know are healthy, right? Whole plant-based foods, nuts and legumes, healthy oils. So the things that, like you and I have written and spoken about frequently, those natural chemicals, the lycopene, the quercetin, the hydroxytyrosols, they are now surfacing as players. These same natural chemicals that are found in healthy plant-based foods, whole foods, actually are players, because they can help sensitize our cells to absorb energy. So they improve insulin sensitivity. They can also help us switch that bad fat, undesirable fat, hungry fat, into good fat, the brown fat that actually can crank up your energy burn, which is really cool. And also, by the way, certain bioactives can intercept stem cells. So our body has these fat stem cells to make more fat. Certain foods can intercept them and take these baby pre-fat cells called pre-adipocytes and make them stay there. It's like it's like a traffic cop, telling somebody to tell that car to stay right there. We can eat foods that can actually direct the traffic of fat, which I think is really remarkable. Mother Nature is really clever. Very rarely does she have one system do only one thing. Usually, systems will do multiple things. So in my book, Eat to Beat Disease, I talked about the microbiome actually helps you speed healing, communicates to your brain, your social hormones, helps influence your immune system. Well, the microbiome actually is a critical regulator of metabolism, helps metabolize lipids, blood floating around your bloodstream, and how your body uses glucose as well. Now, not surprisingly, and some people may have heard me talk about this, in fact, on your podcast, we're now discovering, cancer researchers are discovering that there's certain bacteria that, when present, allow your body to respond to cancer treatments so you have a better outcome. And one of them is Akkermansia. You and I have talked about this before. Pomegranate juice, Concord grape juice, cranberry juice actually helps to grow more Akkermansia. It has to do with the elagitannins, these natural chemicals that cause your gut to secrete more healthy mucus that this bacteria, Akkermansia, loves to grow in. Now, what's interesting is that when this is a big study done, like with 10,000 people in China, people who actually are heavier, going into overweight to obese, actually have less to no Akkermansia in their gut.
Wow.
People who are thinner, leaner, lean body mass, just because you're skinny doesn't mean that you don't have body fat, but people who have low body fat actually have more Akkermansia. So Akkermansia seems to be sort of this conductor of metabolism, body fat regulation, glucose homeostasis as well, immune function and inflammation, cancer development. I mean, just so profound. And so this is just one example of a single bacteria. And we've got 39 trillion bacteria. So we're just at the tip of the iceberg. but this is actionable. So, certain foods that contain elagitannins like pomegranate juice, Concord grape, cranberry, those polyphenols that are found, those natural chemicals found, polyphenols found in those fruits, actually stimulate the growth of more akkermansia. So if you can actually have an orange, should you have a lot of orange juice? Well, there's fiber in oranges, there's vitamin C, there's a lot of hesperidin, narogenin, a lot of good bioactives, but there's also a lot of fructose in orange juice. In fact, you need 2 large, juicy, ripe oranges to make, you need 8 of them to make 2 cups of, two glasses of orange juice, a tall glass, right? Now, when would you sit down to eat 8 oranges? No. You wouldn't. You would eat 1 orange and get all that other, the healthy stuff along with the orange. And so this is why, fruit juices, as a general rule, are not as good a choice for your metabolism than going for the whole food. And this goes back to the whole food, because juicing itself, it's a kind of processing, right? And then you filter it, you're filtering out all the good stuff too. In many ways, if we think about ourselves as a species living on a planet, and that we're constantly communicating with things around us, and plants and animals are also communicating back to us. It's this continuous feedback loop that's actually going on. So, this is you think about these bioactives in whole foods. They are Mother Nature's way, a plant's way of communicating to our bodies, right? And so that's really quite profound. And what's interesting is that many of those healthy plants that we already know about, tomatoes, broccoli, bok choy, kale, they all have these sulforaphanes. Then the sulforaphanes activate your white adipose tissue, the bad fat, that hungry fat, and actually starts to slow them down, shrink them down, and direct them into a different direction to become more brown. Brown fat, actually, by the way, so big bulging fat, right? This is the life preserver you throw off the boat to rescue somebody. That's the stuff you don't want around your waistline. Well, it turns out that that the healthy fat, the brown fat, the burnable fat that burns out energy, is not a lump. It's very thin, and it's woven like a seamstress between your muscles. Wow. Amazing, right? So way back in I think the 1800s, 18th century, a biologist, a naturalist in Switzerland, Konrad Gessner, was finding these rodents in the mountains of Switzerland and dissecting them, and they were hibernating animals. And he found this thing between their shoulder blade, and he called it he said it's neither fat nor flesh, but it got bigger in the winter because he was catching these guys while they're hibernating. Oh, wow. And what later on was discovered in the early 1900s is that, actually it's a kind of fat. It resembled a sort of a fat. And then when they jumped forward and found it in babies, they actually found that, so in these rodents, it was right between the shoulder blades. It get bigger during the winter, and it would actually shrink during the summer. And people are saying, well, how come these animals don't starve when they're hibernating? It's because that they're building up these things. And this is a heat generator. This is their space heater. And it was actually fueling up their metabolism. Babies have it too, right between the shoulder blades. And for a long time, the medical community thought, this brown fat's like an artifact from evolution. It's like an appendix. It doesn't have any real use. Hey, look, we have sweaters. We've got indoor heating. We don't need that brown fat to heat us up anymore. Turns out, this is a super fascinating story. There was a 67-year-old patient that came to a Boston hospital, Mass General Hospital, and had a tumor in her chest. And so they were doing a PET scan to look at it. So a PET scan, for those of you who don't know, it actually measures the metabolism of a tumor. And so cancers will light up because they're really active, fast dividing cells. When they scanned this patient's chest, the tumor lit up like like fireworks. So when they biopsied, guess what they found? They didn't find cancer cells. They found fat cells. And when they looked at the fat, it was brown fat. Okay. And they were like, whoa, this is crazy. So they actually called it a hibernoma. All right. There's a whole tumor category that's based on Konrad Gessner's little rodent discovery of hibernating animals. So pathologists used to call this hibernomas, okay, when they used to find them. Wow. So this radiologist went back, okay, and looked at 1,000 PET scans taken from adults in Boston for different reasons, all kinds of different scans, and he found that that people are lighting up, that this brown fat was lighting up in different places and different times. It goes one step further. Remember, I told you these rodents are hibernating in the cold, right? In Central Europe, like around Switzerland. It's pretty damn cold in the wintertime there.
Yeah.
What he found when he looked at the date of the scan, when did the scans, the scans that lit up with brown fat were all done during the winter months in Boston. Cold temperatures light up your brown fat.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
So then fast forward. So we now know that we've got a pretty substantial amount of brown fat. And when they look at where it is, it's not just behind our shoulder blades. It's around our neck. It's around our girdle. It's up behind our chest. There's some in our belly. And cold temperatures and certain foods will light it up. And that's kind of like the cool part. The bioactives in foods will mimic these temperature and other factors to really help us burn fat. Anybody in the medical community will know that the teaching of the drug companies is that a little bit's not enough, and then you want to increase the dose until you get the maximal tolerated dose. That's how drugs are developed. That's how chemotherapy is developed. Yeah. How much can you how high can you make the dose until you basically make the person croak? That's really how drugs are developed. And yet that's not how biology is. When we eat those, when we have that symbiotic relationship with plants, which I totally agree with. And by the way, humans aren't the only ones that do this. Bears go out and forage for berries, for specific kinds of things. Insects go out and look for specific types of plants and pollen to be able to service their own systems as well. So, we're all carrying a page from the playbook of every other living species on the planet. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it always goes back to the plant-based foods. But here's, I think, what's really cool. We can actually think about this hormesis concept is so important. A little might not be enough. A little bit more might be better. Even more might actually get you where you want to be. And then when you go way overboard, you actually get less of an effect. And by the way, this is a lesson I think that people need to hear about dietary supplements, right? Because you get your quercetin, you get chlorogenic acid, you get your lycopene, you get your whatever it is. And the thinking is, for a lot of people who are not savvy to the idea of hormesis, is that more isn't always more. Yeah. At some point, more is less. May not be toxic, but you might actually move away from the benefit that you would get from it. This is my new deep area of research. I'm not going to go into the complex. I'm going to go for the simple things. Turns out for your metabolism that what you eat and how you live can actually help to restore the metabolism that you were destined to have born with, which is the same as everyone else. All right. So you're not doomed by your genetics. You're capable of actually restoring your own healthy metabolism. And if you listen to the Dr. Mark Hymans of the world, you can actually elevate them as well, which to me is an inspirational message that you can actually not just claw your way back to where you started, but you can actually even get better. To me, how do you do that? You do that by actually a lot of the common sense things that we over and over we've been saying. Eat mostly plant-based foods, whole foods, fruits and vegetables, nuts, legumes, healthy oils, avoid excessive unhealthy fats. All right. Yeah. Omega-3s, which come from seafood and seaweed, are also great complements. And look, I'm somebody who really enjoys food. I don't love to eat, but I enjoy food, and I love the traditions of food. It's okay to, you don't have to be a vegan to enjoy your life, and you should live your life. But what you need to do is that you're tending your own body's garden. So you need to make sure you're taking care of it most of the time. Taking care of it, of not only eating well, cooking it the right way. So, omega-3 healthy, a piece of salmon. Okay. If you deep fry it and turn it into fish and chips, it's what we do to our food, even at home, actually can make the difference between turning something that's good and making it better versus taking something that's good and taking it less good for you. So that's something, it's in your hands. And then, of course, the simple things like staying physically active, getting good quality sleep, managing stress, those are all the composite things that those systems. We started at the very beginning of this podcast talking about all these molecular systems and the microbiome. Look, you don't need to memorize all the things that folks like you and I are uncovering. But what you do need to understand is that how you schedule your life, how you run your life has a profound effect, this domino effect on all the things inside. So do good things for yourself. Do a good deed for yourself every single day, 3 times a day, and while you're sleeping at night. That's the secret to actually helping your metabolism. It actually, our body is shifting over time as we age, and there are all these little gears and parts are all moving and responding to that information. So here's the thing that, like listen, I'm an internal medicine doc like you. I'm a vascular biologist, and I've been involved with biotech development. So for me, I've always been curious on the mechanisms. What do we understand about a molecular or cellular process that drives a disease? And if we understand that, could we apply the science to come up with a solution? And that's really how immunotherapy and anti-angiogenic therapy and all these growth factor therapies, this is modern medicine at its best from a technology perspective. However, what really drew me into the nutrition world was I realized that, when we're diving after disease, including obesity, by the way, we're already kind of looking at we're trying to figure out what causes the hurricane while we're in the eye of the storm. Everything is blowing around us. The roofs are coming off, ducking for cover. And so one of the things that I think is so fascinating to me as a scientist, as a doctor, is really going back to take a look at, well, what happens before you're sick? Like, what's the basic function of the body like before we're trashed, at any age? And so this is where a profound study was published in 2021 in the journal Science, one of the most credible scientific journals, by a guy named Herman Ponzer, who's a professor at Duke University. He worked with colleagues from 19 other countries to look at 6,000 people and ask what was their metabolism like. And so, the onesies and twosies and the threesies studies that have been done on metabolism, or people that are doing sports strengths or athletes doing research studies, that's one thing. But what they did is they took a look at, it's amazing. They took a look at people that were just a few days old to 95 years old. And they applied the exact same measurement system, which uses a form of water that has an atom that you can actually measure in a room. So talk about a closed system. So you put these people into a closed system and you give them this cocktail to drink. What ended up happening is that they could actually measure from their breath and their urine how their body was using metabolism. And what they found was, of course, everybody's metabolism was all over the place. So information, right? So put information in, they're eating and drinking, information out, they're measuring it, looks like a mess, except one of the things that they did is they developed, back to the physicists, they used mathematics to kind of correct for age, size, sex, and this is really kind of the mic drop here, they corrected for body fat. So what they realized is that everyone's going to have a different level of body fat from the time they're a baby to their time they're in their 90s across the age span. And when they did that, this chaotic data set suddenly clarified itself into 4 phases of human metabolism as we age from a few days old until we're in our 90s. And that really changed my mind when I saw that data to go, this is like a eureka moment, that humans all are hardwired, and it makes total sense to go through the same stages of cellular metabolism as we age. And so there's 4 phases. 0 to 1 is one phase. So when you're born, we're corrected for body size. We have the same pace of metabolism as our moms did. That makes sense. We were synced with our mom's metabolism, corrected for size. But from 0 to 1, our metabolism soars to about 50% of higher than what we're going to have when we're an adult. And that's why neonatal nutrition, what we feed our babies in the first year of life, is so profound. All those cells are taking in those calories, the nutrients, breastfeeding, everything counts in the first year of life. So from the get-go, the fuel that we're giving our bodies actually can make a huge difference going downstream. From 1 year old down to 20, our metabolism actually starts to go down to adult levels. And so when you're a teenager and you're seeing teens eat 2 or 3 dinners and they're spring up a tree, right? What do we always say? Like, oh man, our kids are like sprouting like trees, their metabolism's going crazy. actually the metabolism is going down, heading down towards adult levels.
Yeah.
Surprise, right? And then from 20 to 60, that's during college age, your first job, your marriage, your marriage, if you get divorced, your menopause, all those kinds of things. Actually, it's a straight line of how our body's programmed. And only at 60 years old, in our sixth decade, does our metabolism start to decline very, very slowly, so that by the time we're 90, our metabolism at 90 years old is 75% what it was when we were 60.
Hey, if you like that video, then you're going to love this one. Check it out.